Hello, I'm Mark Staples, and I represent Bresnan Communications, the Montana Cable Television Telecommunications Association, and MCAT in bringing to you a series of legislative candidate interviews for the 2009 legislature. Today with me, competing for the seat for House District 90 in the Bitterroot Valley here near Missoula, is Yvonne Gritzner, the Democratic candidate. Her Republican opponent, Ray Hawk, was invited and had a scheduling conflict and could not attend. So Yvonne will get an opportunity to visit. To start out, I'd like you to tell our viewing audience and your constituents to be, if you're elected, your background and how you came to a position where that you're willing to run and serve the people in Helena.
The people in Montana, I assume we mean.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm a native Montanan. My name's Yvonne Gritzner, and my earliest ancestor came to Montana Territory in 1864. It was a woman. She was 48 years old, and she came west to Montana Territory after her husband had died and came with her unmarried children, crossed the prairies 13 times. Admittedly, in later years, it was on the train. So I have deep roots in Montana. I've lived in the Bitterroot Valley now for 18 years, and I have a family of 3 children, 3 grown children, and 3 grandchildren, excuse me. Married to Jeff Gritzner, who's a geographer at the University of Montana, and have lived in a few places around the world, thanks to being married to a geographer. My young life in Bozeman was spent camping and hiking with the Camp Fire program. My mother was involved in Camp Fire Girls, and I went on to become a Camp Fire leader for many years also, and hopefully awakened a number of young girls to the beauty of nature and the love of wildlife and flowers and all the glories of our beautiful planet. I have worked with legislation in Helena as a citizen advocate for the Montana PBS. We were able to get legislation passed last session, and I even won an award by the National Friends of PBS for grassroots advocacy. So maybe that's where I whetted my appetite a little bit for politics. I do find that there's need for change in government, and I'd like to work for that change. I believe that probably brings us to
That's a very good start. To go from that genteel start to you're about to enter a baptism by fire if you're elected. Right now, unless we are under rocks, we can't help but be bombarded by the fear that's been generated about the financial meltdown on the national scene. And I'd like your opinion. If you go to Helena, are we going to get some overlap from that in Montana? Are we insulated from it? Are there things we can do to ensure a robust Montana economy so that we don't suffer a similar meltdown? Your thoughts on Montana's economy in general, and if you want to give an overlay of the national economy, that'd be great.
Well, my understanding of the problems on Wall Street and all are quite rudimentary. I'm not. I feel that there are some very strong arguments that are coming down from both sides of what we should do to resolve that situation, and I don't claim to be an expert in that area. I do feel that Montana is not suffering from the real estate prime mortgage debacle that has gone on. And thanks in no small part to our realtors and to our banks here in Montana. And I think that our Governor Schweitzer and the legislators have gotten behind a good forward program of energy development, both using our traditional energy and and looking forward to the renewable energies, which I think will increase our economy, will give us jobs, Montana jobs, that will be with an economy that will be available and exportable to other states also through energy, the richness of the solar and wind and geothermal and even small hydro. There are many, many opportunities if we will just commit to going in that direction of new energy. I think that we will find ourselves leading the nation. We can do it if we really commit to that. In other ways, I believe our jobs are connected in many ways to health problems, as far as our businesses having to hire part-time because they can't afford the insurance. There are programs, Insure Montana, that will help to provide incentives for those small businesses to hire full-time. I think that we are in a good position, actually, in Montana.
With regards to, I mean, if I heard this correctly, we're in pretty good shape, but we have some needs. And one of them that's been enunciated by some folks, there's an argument about it, but many folks feel that our education, particularly K through 12, is just simply underfunded. And through the years, we've argued about whether we need to consolidate schools and cut back on administrative costs, but you know, on the national charts, people say we don't measure up in terms of pupil spending and particularly teacher salaries. If we need more funding, and I'm not taking a position on that, I'm not asking you to take a position on that, maybe you do. I guess I would. Do we need to put more funding in our school system? And if your answer is yes, where do we get the money? Some have said it could cost as much as $600 million more a year to adequately fund our schools. And if we do need substantially more money spent on schools, where do we get it?
Well, I'm happy to take a position on that, and education is one of my highest priorities, and I do feel that in the United States, and again from the national sort of attitude, that we have practically turned our backs on public education, and it is so valued in Montana. We've had strong schools. That's one of the blessings and treasures of Montana, I think, are our schools. And there are many ways to, of course, look at the funding problem, and I don't agree that property taxes should not be linked to education, funding education. I mean, it is clear that the value of one's home when you sell it is very directly linked to the quality of schools in your neighborhood. People buy homes in neighborhoods that have good schools. And so I think that there is a direct connection there with the property values, but I don't believe that we should just tax property. We have to give our homeowners a break in that regard. And I understand there are other avenues of bringing in funds from out-of-state property owners and out-of-state businesses that are, from what I understand, are not paying their fair share of the contribution. Education is at the basis of our democratic form of government. If we don't have a well-educated populace, we cannot have a well-run democracy. There are some other things. We're prepared to pay subsidies to farmers and ranchers for feeding our stomachs and our children's stomachs, but our teachers are feeding our children's minds, and I think they need to be supported. And this is something we really need to take as a very high priority.
Thank you. Are there anything else that you feel are needs that need to be addressed currently in Montana, and in keeping with the kind of the mantra that both comes from the federal and state government now, when a need is identified, it's now called for in most government circles. If you believe there's a need, and you stated that public education is one, are there any others? And if so, are the funding sources for those, like you've said, the suggested that some aren't paying their fair share, are those the same funding sources that we would use to what other needs? Do we have other needs? And can you explain to me and the viewing public where we would get the finances to handle those if we do?
I think my other strongest priority at the time is healthcare for Montanans, and I think it's a shame that in this country and in Montana that healthcare is still a privilege and not a right, and I believe it is a right, and that many Montanan families are struggling between feeding their families and getting proper health care for their children. So I think this is something that we really need to find a cure for, and I think we have many fronts on which to improve the access with expanding into local areas, more available, accessible clinics. We have to regulate, I believe we really have to regulate the insurance industry to assure that our insurance premiums are within a range of affordability and that doctors aren't having to pay overly. Much of the cost of insurance is going to, cost of medical care is going to insurance companies, and I think we need to sit down at the table and work with the insurance industry. And so it wouldn't be so much bringing in new taxes or new sources of funding, but just getting a better balance of where our expenses are going, because doctors are not, the practitioners, general practice doctors are not seeing an increase, and yet every time we turn around, the patients' fees are being increased, whether it's the actual charges or the premiums for their insurance.
You said, I said that I think I heard you say, I don't think the answer is new taxes, and I'm not going to hold you to that, but I thought that's what you said. With one specific tax that particularly I think would be of interest to those in the Bitterroot, the cities feel that the good times that the state has enjoyed over the last several bienniums in terms of the surpluses has not necessarily trickled down to the cities, and that they have needs, infrastructure needs, and police and fire, and needs that they don't receive the funds to take care of. And their proposal is to bring to the legislature a bill for local option taxing authority. Right now, those communities that are designated resort areas are able to take to their voters proposals to tax, say, alcohol by the drink, meals, or lodging in their communities. Some have voted for them, some have turned them down. The city's proposal now is that all communities, resort or otherwise, ought to be able to have the right to take to their electorate the proposition to tax certain items to help finance city services. Will you be asked to vote on that if you're sent to Helena? Are you in favor of allowing local option taxing authority, or do you have some reservations about it?
I guess I'd have to have reservations in that I have not yet been fully informed and educated on all sides of the issue. I think that the cities have a real need and a strong reason for bringing this forward. My own representation in the Bitterroot Valley is much more needs for the county, and the county seems to have real needs for law enforcement funding and maintenance of highways, secondary roads, the county roads, that I think would be given my first priority as far as representing District 90 in the northern part of the Bitterroot Valley. But I would certainly sit down and listen to all sides and try to make an equitable judgment on that question. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Are there any specific, and I'll let you, we have I'd love to sit and visit with you for a long time. You're a very thoughtful candidate, as all the candidates have turned out to be. We're very privileged to have such qualified people running for these offices. But alas, we have others waiting to be interviewed as well. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, Yvonne, to close. I just hit some broad-based subjects, but there may be some things that are dear to your heart that you intend, if you're elected, to really concentrate on while you're there. And I'd like you to give you an opportunity to speak to those, and then I guess one last request for the voters to give you their support.
Thank you. I have spent the last 16 years, well, I recently retired, and during 16 years I worked with the Montana Committee for the Humanities, providing programs and grants for counties and communities and reservations all across the state, and became very familiar with the state and its people and its projects and its needs. And one of the grant projects that we had involved bringing food to needy people. There are more and more people who are really in sort of food insecurity positions in our state than most people are aware of. And I would like to carry and support legislation that would come out of a number of groups that are working to bring local produce, local farm goods and food to people who are in stressed and disadvantaged positions economically, and as well as for the populace of Montana as a whole. There are many groups working on that, and the food bank, the farm to school, many of these organizations that are working on legislation. I would be very supportive of their programs and hope to carry legislation in Helena to that regard. So I do hope that you find that some of these things I've expressed are concerns also of yours. I think that we need to work for change when change is needed, and I do have, I hope we share some of these concerns, and that I can earn your trust and your vote in November.
Well, Yvonne, thank you for coming and taking the time and driving in from the Bitterroot for this interview, which is being conducted in Missoula at the facilities of the public access channel in Missoula. Bresnan Communications thanks you. Montana Cable Telecommunications Association thanks you. And we want to thank all the candidates. You, Yvonne, what you're getting into, obviously the campaigning is arduous enough, but your reward, if you should win, is 10 times as difficult. You get the honor of working 12 to 14-hour days for what Montanans would normally call it short pay, 6 days a week, and on the 7th day you get the honor of hearing from your constituents for what they didn't like about what you did the first 6 days of the week. So I, having been in Helena for almost 30 years now, I'm very grateful to people of your caliber for putting yourselves on the line and going out in the public and seeking to help us all by serving. And again, thank you for coming. And thank you, viewers. Most important of all, this matters not if you tune them out, 1, and 2, if you don't vote. So please go vote for the candidate of your choice. Thank you.